My name is Drew M. Scott, and I'm the author of The Monster in Blackwood Forest, which is the first book in the Mortal Choice trilogy. I'm here today to share with you an excerpt of the book, so come along with me. Clouds, which previously filled the dusk sky, blotting out any light from the rising moon, suddenly parted as if by supernatural request, giving freedom to the lunar rays. Crisp, blue-white light shot through openings in the once dense accumulation, striking the forest floor below as glowing daggers. The deafening silence was only broken by the sporadic scurry of nocturnal scavengers, awakening for the newly dawned night. Autumn was filtering its way into the area and brought with it various colors and a blanket of fallen leaves. The many Douglas firs, with their season-defying green, perfumed the woods with a light scent. It was the smell of clean air, fresh with a barely perceivable nip. Much was the same as every night previous. Long shadows stretched across the land, the air steadily decreased in temperature, and the stars speckled the fathomless sky. This night, however, there was a dread that accompanied the evening that lingered heavily over all the darkness touched. Most of the area was unpopulated, but the woods and the interesting rock formations prominent throughout it were popular with hikers and overnight backpackers. Lost Lake, Silent Creek, and Wolf's Hollow, making up the north, east, and west edges of Blackwood Forest, respectively, attracted many hikers in the summer, but this late in the year, it was rare to have people on the trails. Stumbling in the shadows, cast by the towering trees and the silver hue of the waxing moon, a lone human form moved in staggering slow motion. Undiscernible as woman or man, the figure moved slowly with a clear limp. Hunched over at the waist, it struggled with each step as though the cool air held a weight that pushed against it. With every labored movement closer to the light, the figure buckled over further until finally giving in. It fell hard to the forest floor with a dense thud that seemed disproportionate to its size. Just shy of reaching the light, the unclothed shadow let out a howling scream of pain that echoed for miles. Its body contorted in unnatural shapes, which twitched in time with each agonizing grunt. All that drew breath around it paused. 2 miles west of Lost Lake, a natural clearing, something nature had created more perfect than could any person trying to mimic it, was an off-green and white tent pitched in the flat, grassy area. Once an extremely shallow pond, but now, many years later, it was a thick grassy patch of land perfect for camping and a favorite spot for backpackers. Only 0.2 of a mile from the designated trail and nicely tucked between thick evergreen growth, it was usually home to several hikers and nature lovers taking advantage of the proximity to the crystal-clear waters of Lost Lake. But, with fall and the end of the busier season at hand, its frequency of visitors had waned. Set near the back of the clearing, in relation to the trail, and almost perfectly centered in the width of the soft, struggling green, the small 2-person tent, well used and bordering on shabby, stood out prominently against the dark forest background. 2 shadows, equally distorted by the older tent's WeatherTech material, rustled about inside. It's still early. I'm not ready to call it a night. Lexi, a young woman traveling with her boyfriend of 3 years, simply stated as she unzipped the tent's main flap. Maybe we can go for a walk nearby. We could, you know. Trevor, winking as he spoke, nudged Lexi's leg as she tried to finagle her way out of the tent. Does it always have to be about sex? Lexi began to chastise as she stood up fully and stretched. The early evening air bit at her exposed flesh. Not donning her jacket, she wrapped her arms around herself briefly with a small shiver. It's not always. Shh. Loudly shushing her boyfriend before he could finish, Lexi knelt down quickly and poked her head inside the zipper flap. Did you hear that? Concealed in the darkness of the trees and arching its back, the beast snapped its jaws and dug at the earth before before standing fully upright and howling once again. Sniffing the air for a moment, it peered in several directions before tearing off into the woods. Its first steps were bipedal, before dropping down to all fours and increasing its speed. What? My heart breaking because my girlfriend doesn't want to... Trevor began to detail his sarcastic response before cutting himself off. He had not heard the first howl, but the second one had caught his attention. The muted howl, almost too low to hear, mixed with the wind and the leaves and echoed lightly in the cool air. Chills of fear tickled both of the campers' flesh, and they trembled at the thought of what had made the sound. Too deep to be a dog, far more resonating than what they thought could be a wolf's, the night cry felt threatening. That! Lexi, trying to crawl back into the tent, whispered with fear, sending gooseflesh over her entire body. Her movements, uncoordinated, wrestled the flimsy old tent, nearly pulling the stakes out of the ground. Urgency washed over her face, draining her already fair complexion of color. It's fine. There are plenty of animals in these woods, and none of them give a flip about us. Trevor, concealing his own nervousness, spoke as confidently as he could as he broadened his shoulders and flexed his biceps. He wanted to at least appear as Lexi's brave gentleman. Inside he knew, however, what they had heard was not normal, and if nothing else, it demanded their respect. He swallowed hard under the drying of his mouth. His throat, constricting, barely allowed his breath to pass. Another howl, fading up, as if rapidly moving towards them, followed Trevor's comments, scaring them both. Heavy thudding paws to dead leaves and dense earth rose in tempo and volume. Neither could see what was coming, but it was clear, and it was speedily headed their way. "Get in here now!" Panicked, Trevor shouted as Lexi's face turned white in terror. Her eyes widened so large he could plainly see her pupils in the dim light. A hungry growl and a vicious yank pulled Lexi from the tent before she could scream. Tossing her to the side, the vicious monster, nearly blending into the darkness of the night, tore at her leg and clawed her abdomen. Blood sprang up and splashed against the tent. Its heavily salivating jaws bit down hard on Lexi, repeatedly tearing away flesh, which seemed to further the intensity and viciousness of the beast's attack. The soft glow of the partial moon and the faint yellowish light from their small, battery-powered lantern glistened off its coat with a sheen that occasionally showed its full and massive form. It was huge. The occasional flash of its bright, glowing eyes and the snap of its jaws sent horrified chills down Trevor's spine. "Lexi!" Grabbing his hunting knife, a 7-inch blade serrated on one side, Trevor tried to exit the tent, fumbling slightly while attempting to clear the zippered flap. His muscles were stiff and his gut tied in knots. He had to save his girlfriend. With one hard slap of its massive paw, the beast knocked Trevor completely out of the tent and laid open most of the young man's face and neck, severing his carotid artery. Bleeding out before he could even recognize the pain he was in, Trevor watched as the last seconds of his life faded, his girlfriend being mauled by a large black animal. Thanks for stopping by, and I hope you enjoyed the short section that I was able to read for you today. Take care.